Tonight, there is accountability to be claimed and assigned in the sad story of 17-year-old Jordan Brooks of Palermo. He lost more than half his body weight in the months leading up to his death when he weighed just 55 pounds. Jordan Brooks lived with cerebral palsy, which is a broad name for a group of disorders that affect the ability to move and maintain balance and posture. Authorities say he died of malnourishment and sepsis, with exposed bones, sores covering his body, and a useless wheelchair, rusty and urine-stained with a moldy seat. Most of what you're about to hear tonight is simply sickening. But we start with the heroes of the saga, whose efforts to save Jordan at times either fell on caseworkers who didn't want to hear it or who were openly hostile and annoyed by the complaints about his welfare. In the Mexico School District, we find these heroes, caring staff who knew Jordan Brooks was in trouble for years. One time, as documented in the legal case brought against his mother and stepfather for manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide, staff members put a mark on Jordan's diaper on a Friday. When the school week started again on Monday, the mark was there. It was the same diaper. School staff are mandatory reporters of child abuse and neglect. It's their job to raise alarm when they believe alarm should be raised. They did. And time and again, Oswego County Social Services responded in a similar manner. This is from the State Office of Children and Family Services Child Fatality Report, done many months after Jordan died. Many of the entries read just like this. The allegations and concerns were not fully explored. Jordan was not asked about sores on his body or toileting. The moldy and stained wheelchair was not addressed. School staff's concerns were not addressed with the mother or stepfather. Oswego County Department of Social Services did not follow up with Jordan's mother to ensure she was utilizing the appropriate incontinence supplies. It's been 323 days since Jordan Brooks died. Over the weekend, dozens attended a vigil at Mexico High School to honor his life. Many of them treated this as the closest thing they could get to a funeral service because they told us there was no public celebration of his life last spring after he died. We have not been able to uncover an obituary for him. At the vigil, Jordan was remembered for his smile, his sarcasm, and his kind attitude towards others. And while many people brought stories about him, they also brought anger over what happened to him.
His personality was he was just a kind, loving kid that had a great sense of humor, loved sarcasm, and was just really focused on helping others and took great joy in that.
He was a bright young man with an infectious smile, even through his struggles. He would often express frustration in his body not working correctly, but never did it stop him from trying to complete the things that were challenging for him. If you want to make a difference, leave here and create Jordan's Law. Leave here and create a law that will protect children. Leave here and be the voice that's louder than everybody else.
The death of Jordan Brooks reveals what many have known but few want to talk about. Being a child in Oswego County is a risk factor. While so many parents and caregivers are doing the right things, showing love in all the right ways, many are not. Children in Oswego County are being abused and mistreated at 3 times the rate of other children across New York State. Yet the Oswego County Legislature only felt the need to add 1 senior caseworker and no frontline caseworkers in the most recent budget. Nothing about the current state of the Department of Social Services in Oswego County should come as a surprise to anyone who is in charge of running it, working in it, or overseeing it. In fact, the commissioner has been raising concerns about staff turnover since at least 2017. In that year, she told a committee of the legislature that the turnover rate was a crisis. Which begs the question, if Oswego County's Department of Social Services Commissioner, Stacey Alvord, had been raising alarm for so long, if she was so well aware of the trouble brewing at the office she's in charge of, why not say something to us when she had the opportunity? Instead, last week, after she issued a statement saying how her heart breaks for all those who cared for and loved Jordan, and saying we are doing all we can to assure this never happens again, why not say that right to the camera? Why run away? At about the same time the commissioner was trying to get away from our reporter, the county was issuing a statement in her name. That statement said the Department of Social Services takes full responsibility for not verifying and assuring Jordan's medical needs were being met, and goes on to say the caseworkers relied on the mother's word and shouldn't have trusted that she would get Jordan appropriate treatment if his condition worsened. Commissioner Alvord runs a department of caseworkers who are responsible for vetting abuse and neglect reports. Who among us has not worked in a system where some people are more effective or more efficient in their jobs than others? Who hasn't seen someone leave a job or be let go from a job because they're not a good fit? One person, maybe several people in a large system can be problematic employees. That's life. The evidence uncovered so far does not lead to a conclusion that this is a couple of bad apples. It's the tree. It's system-wide, and we'll be watching and questioning as outrage over Jordan Brooks turns to action. Before taking any responsibility, the Department of Social Services made it clear that Jordan's mother and stepfather were in charge of his care. Of course, this is true. When we went to the family home in Palermo last week, we had many questions, including why Jordan's parents failed to get him a required swallow test to keep his cerebral palsy in check and to ensure he would get proper nutrition and wouldn't choke. Jordan's stepfather, in a very brief conversation with my colleague Megan Coleman, seemed most focused on what he considered to be unfair media coverage of his stepson's death and the arrest of him and his wife. Any comparison of Jordan's death to the death of Aaron Maxwell back in 2008 is simply not right, he said, because his house is clean. The murder of Aaron Maxwell was not simply about housekeeping. To suggest so is a mischaracterization and does nothing to understand the mountain of problems and failures that were uncovered afterwards. Aaron's murder exposed filthy living conditions and a home life that many would consider torture. She went hungry. The criminal case against his parents say Jordan was malnourished too. Jordan Brooks was a toddler when Aaron Maxwell was killed by her stepbrother. And after her death, community outrage led to action. The changes after Aaron Maxwell's death were supposed to ensure Jordan didn't slip through the cracks. Oswego County started a Child Protection Advisory Council to boost training and make sure everyone at DSS was following regulations. It hired more caseworkers to reduce caseloads. Social Services changed some procedures with how it communicates with school districts. And there was a change of leadership. The commissioner was replaced. Even harsh critics of the department called it a sea change back then. So what happened? Can anyone calling for change once again be confident that we won't wind up in the same place? If you're at all interested in what the Department of Social Services in Oswego and every other county in the state is up against when it comes to abuse and neglect, I suggest you do some reading if you have the stomach for it. Google New York State child fatality reports, and you'll find the narrative the state keeps on the death of every minor by county. See what's happening where you live. The reports don't include names, and they seem to be designed at least a little bit to make it a challenge for a layperson to decipher them. But it is possible to do it. And you can get past the protective jargon and the abbreviations. This is a window into hell. Since the death of Jordan Brooks was uncovered, we've revealed the death of a baby girl in Palermo from last year. The child was in rigor mortis by the time 911 was called and had a recent broken wrist and a forearm and other injuries to her face. All the adults in the home, the mother, her boyfriend, grandparents, and 2 uncles, are listed in the child fatality report as, quote, alleged perpetrators. No one has been arrested for the 1-year-old's death. Incidentally, these child fatality reports are put together by the Office of Children and Family Services, which is looking at an $800 million cut in funding if the state budget passes as it is now. Tonight, there's a petition calling for the Commissioner of Social Services in Oswego County to be removed. But already the beleaguered department is acknowledging its failures before anyone really investigates its shortcomings. Social Services will work with a visiting nurse service to evaluate medically frail children from now on. Will that make a difference? We'll watch and see. But in the meantime, the criminal justice system will speak for Jordan Brooks. The focus there at this point is solely on his parents. There has not been a whiff of allegation of any criminal wrongdoing on the part of anyone at Social Services. The failings at that department at this point appear to be systemic and moral. All of it wrapped in a policy and procedure and law and confidentiality that make it difficult for anyone on the outside to gauge the true extent of what's going on and where change is needed. The Oswego County Sheriff's Department hasn't answered our questions about why the criminal case against Jordan's parents took all this time to build. However, it is worth noting that without charges against them, few people outside a small circle of politicians and the Department of Social Services itself would know anything about this. Jordan Brooks would have disappeared. We'd never know that a child protective caseworker last had eyes on him 1 month before he died. And that person didn't notice any concerns about how he looked or his health in general. Without the law enforcement component to this, the arrest of the parents, the Oswego County Department of Social Services might have had the last word. In fact, it wrote these words as a rebuttal to the state's child fatality report. Given high caseload sizes, significant staffing issues, and the worldwide pandemic, we will do our best going forward. The department also said more, including that other service providers indicated there were no concerns about Jordan. This, for so long, had been the last word on the death of Jordan Brooks. The chairman of the Oswego County Legislature, which has oversight of social services, told us last week there will be a full-blown investigation into how DSS handled the case of Jordan Brooks.
In your estimation, though, did DSS drop the ball here? Did they bear some level of responsibility?
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to find out. I wouldn't want to say who dropped the ball, but we're going to find out. I can promise you that.
Tonight, a lot of this is still being formulated. What will the Oswego County Legislature's investigation examine? Which outside agency will it hire to lead it? What sort of experience does that person or those people have with something of this scope? What sort of access will it have? Already, State Assemblyman Will Barclay has indicated he's ready to step in and help and may even call for his own independent investigation if he doesn't like or trust what's going on at the local level. Whatever turns up, it won't clear up some fundamental misunderstandings about how social services works or the limits of its powers. The same was true after Aaron Maxwell's murder, but community understanding of the intricacies of child protective services, that's a matter for another time. The urgent concern is for all of the children whose names exist in caseworker reports, just as Jordan Brooks' name did. All of those children who may be in danger as we speak.
More than 1 week now after the arrest of Jordan Brooks' mother and stepfather, we have not heard from the Commissioner of Social Services about shortcomings the state pointed to in a child fatality report. So we started digging into months of Oswego County Legislature committee meetings. Each month, the commissioner gives a report to the Human Services Committee. In every meeting, she talks about a staffing shortage so bad, child protective caseworkers can't get their jobs done. And they're quitting faster than new ones can be trained and hired.
I do believe in families' resiliency and everyone needing an opportunity to heal, but I also see such danger in some of these families and to leave kids there versus placing them.
That was 1 month ago, the February 28th Human Services Committee. Alvord explains the DSS staffing shortages she first called a crisis 5 years ago are worse.
More than a third of our staff with less than 3 years? Almost half, right? Yeah. Almost half of our caseworkers is disconcerting for me.
It's not just entry-level workers. The department is also losing senior caseworkers, taking with them their experience to handle cases like the parents of Jordan Brooks.
We had a couple of senior caseworkers, so those are the supervisors. We don't usually lose them, leave us for other jobs. They just felt too overwhelmed with, we need more seniors because some of them are carrying 6 and 7 caseworkers with half of their team having less than, a year and a half in, and they're scared. They can't keep up.
Alvord does not discuss child fatality reports directly in any of the meetings, but she does point to lawsuits in other New York counties, raising legal concerns about lack of supervision of frontline workers.
Lawsuits are won because we're not paying close enough attention. So that is probably one of the things pushing me the most to really take a look at our child welfare staffing. Mm-hmm. That and the number of fatalities going on. I mean, it's crazy.
That is the only time deaths are mentioned. Commissioner Alvord saying the number of fatalities going on is crazy. In November of last year, Alvord addressed another flaw brought out by the state's recent audit of Child Protective in Oswego County: poor record keeping.
If you don't write it down, it didn't happen. And that's another piece where we're really falling behind on. We're back to being up to 9-10 months backlogged in people doing their notes.
In that same meeting, the commissioner in charge of keeping children safe in Oswego County refers to cases as crazy, and it puts stress on her staff.
But you can't just send them out on these really crazy cases alone yet. So now they're shadowing someone. Now that person has to train the new person, as well as their notes. It's a heavy lift for the folks left behind.
Now, during the committee meetings, when the commissioner gives a report, it's unusual to get even a question from a legislator. One inquires about caseworkers using technology to improve the documentation process. None asked any questions about why several children have died while under the watch of Child Protective Services over the last few years. Leader of the Oswego County Legislature has called for a full investigation into the handling of the Jordan Brooks case. But what exactly does that mean, and what progress has been made to launch such an effort? Good evening, I'm Matt Mulcahy.
And I'm Megan Coleman. Neighbors in the Oswego community tonight demanding answers from the Department of Social Services on why the teen went ignored. Community members gathered at Mexico High School this weekend to remember Jordan. Investigators say he died after months of abuse and neglect by his own family, his mother and stepfather. Despite warnings from those close to Jordan, nothing was done to intervene.
Court documents show there were multiple complaints made over the span of several months from Jordan's teachers and aides, warning social services about injuries he had, weight loss, and a lack of basic hygiene. Child Protective Services, despite these warnings and in-person meetings with Jordan, failed to recognize the severity of the issues. Our Mary Keeler is live in Oswego tonight with the latest on the investigation into the agencies that were supposed to be protecting Jordan. Mary?
While it's still unclear tonight who will lead this investigation, I spoke with the minority leader for the Oswego County Legislature tonight, and he tells me he wants the Attorney General's office to do it. Frank Castilla is confident in two things. One, that the death of Jordan Brooks is a tragedy. And two, the Attorney General's office should look into what happened and what DSS missed leading up to his death.
We don't need to spend taxpayer money to have Cornell come up here and do another study. They did one after Aaron Maxwell. We need to have the Attorney General's office take a look at this, not somebody else. The Attorney General's office has nothing to lose. They don't have a dog in this fight.
The Attorney General's office can't open an investigation unless they get a referral from the district attorney or the governor. They're not investigating at this time. All of this is happening as the community calls on DSS Commissioner Stacey Alvord to resign.
If they're asking for a resignation, if they're asking for a firing, we have to take that into consideration in dealing with everything that we're dealing with.
The state's Office of Children and Family Services oversees local DSS agencies, but do not hire or fire the people in them. In this case, it would be up to a vote in the Oswego County Legislature to terminate Alvord or accept her resignation. If it came time to vote to accept a resignation, should Commissioner Alvord put that forward, would you vote yes or no for that?
Personally, yes, I would. I will vote yes on accepting her resignation.
I have continued to renew our ask of Commissioner Alvord to sit down and do an interview with us and talk in her own words about this. Meantime, Frank Castilla telling me tonight he believes she'll decide to step down from her position as DSS Commissioner on her own, calling her a, quote, honorable person.